Good evening, Lynx families. Thank you for joining us for Lynx Learning Support tonight. We know that these last few months have not been easy. Many of us are adding tools to our tool belt that we have never had to use before. And so, as a result of family requests for help on how you can better support your student at home, we have tonight's presentation for you. We have Megan Terada. She will be telling us some executive functioning tips, tricks, and strategies. After that, I will give a brief overview of Schoology and the source, letting you know how you can access some tools and resources for your students there. And then our fantastic Lincoln counseling team is going to give some social emotional support tips. So we have here with us tonight Megan Terada of Terada Counseling. She's an academic, executive function, and parent coach, in addition to being the mother of two Seattle Public Schools students. I am Michelle Pentecost, the academic dean at Lincoln High School. We also have with us Samantha Pacumpra and Todd Biddle, two of our counselors. Mr. Malaki could not make it tonight, but if your last name is between H through O, Mr. Malaki is your counselor and would love to hear from you. So I will now introduce you to Megan. She's going to tell you about time management and planning.
Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Terada. I've been an academic coach for 19 years. And I'm going to talk to you today about executive function, which is like the administrative assistant that runs our brain. How do we plan? How do we execute? How do we think about what needs to happen next? And why are teenagers usually not very good at this yet? So the first thing I'm going to talk to you about is having structure for the day. We hear this all the time: make a schedule, make a schedule, make a schedule. But why does it help teens so much? Teenagers are overwired for social engagement and connection, and that doesn't usually come with a time frame. We don't think of our friendships in terms of 30 minutes a day with X person. So they can often struggle with that 10,000-foot view of what do I need to do this week? What does it look like? When is it going to happen? When we talk to them about building a schedule, it's really important. This is not about being a robot. This is not about having every minute of your day itemized. It's about emotionally preparing and mentally preparing for what's coming at you next and what can be expected to get done. So how do we help teenagers with this? Model, 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 model. Model organizing your day. Talk through your choices and you make them out loud in front of your kids. I'll give you a couple of examples because this is kind of weird to do at first. I'm done working at 6 and I'm leaving my work phone in the office. I really need a break. Or my meeting was canceled. I'm going to go get through some of these emails so that I can figure out what else I have to do and I can have some free time later. We do this anyway, but I want you to practice saying it out loud in front of your team so that they can see that planning mode. Whenever possible, do some planning or organizing in your daily life in front of them where they can see it. This can look like opening the fridge, asking them what they want from the grocery store, getting out recipes, getting everyone's input, sitting down, doing the list, ordering it nearby with their input. And, we're going to collect information, we're going to form a plan, we execute it. Is it fun? No. But kids need to see that everyone is doing some of this tedious multi-step work and everyone takes some pre-work for things to get done well. A lot of times kids are detached from what the daily grind of small things need to get done in order for the bigger picture. They see a household running, but they don't know all the pieces of how it happens. They see the final essay, but they don't really understand the 6 steps of pre-writing that get you there. So we just model breaking things into pieces, doing each piece. That helps give us structure for the day. The second piece is looking at the whole week, looking at each day, but also looking at the week as a whole. Your students should be able to answer you when you look at the whole week. When can I take a break? What do I need to do first? What's the most important thing for me to do each day? And how far can I reasonably expect to get on my workload? These all take practice. Thinking about what can actually get done takes a lot of practice. And so they're going to get it wrong a lot. They're going to think that something takes 5 minutes and it takes 40. They're going to think that finishing these math problems is going to take them 2 hours. And once they figure it out, it takes 20 minutes. They're not good at guessing yet, but we keep practicing it. What needs to happen first? How far can I get? When is my break? Share, again, we're going to model. We're going to show our kids what this looks like in really concrete ways. Share what days are going to be really busy for you and when you have extra time to spend with them or to help them or just to hang out. Be concrete. Model communicating this with everyone in the household that it affects. So Tuesday is back-to-back meetings. I know I'm going to be exhausted. Can we please get takeout? You might already be doing this thinking in your head, but say it out loud so your kids see you budgeting your mental energy and your time. Another example, I have time on chores for Thursday. I'm gonna get that stuff done because I really want to have some time off to do nothing on Saturday. These are things that we think, we plan, maybe we model our day that way. Talk about it out loud so your kids can see it. The last piece, which we're going to get to in a little bit more detail, is making short appointments with your child during the course of the work week. So this can be hard. We want to talk to our kids about what they're doing, what they're not doing, how to help. But if you ambush them and they don't know how to answer the question, you're going to get a one-word answer, or yeah, I got it, it's fine. Or sometimes they lie just out of reaction to end the conversation because I didn't expect we were going to talk about this. It feels stressful to bring it up out of nowhere, all the things I have to do. Instead, we're going to make a short appointment with your team somewhere in the week, have it be consistent, and put it on both your calendars. Stick to it. And these appointments can be a mix of academic, non-academic time. You can schedule appointments to watch a favorite show together. Whatever you're doing, have that structure to the day, value that time, and then give them a few minutes just to vent without judgment, or to talk to you about what they don't understand, or to show you all the cool things they got finished. These appointments are about listening, and they're not about trying to solve whatever is stressing your student out right then. It's really just time where you're just hearing what's happening with them. So those are some tools for looking at the day and the week as a whole. The next part is quantity versus quality. We are looking at short bursts of focused engagement with a really clear objective. So what does this look like? We're hearing from a lot of students that they feel like they're spending all day on their schoolwork, but there isn't a lot getting done, getting finished. So we want to talk about quality study time in little small pieces where you have measurable progress. So I'm going to do this for 15 minutes and I want to get to this point. I'm gonna practice these 3 skills on my math homework and I want to get to this point. Whatever it is, where am I trying to get to? How long do we think it's going to take? And then that can help build momentum and change the emotional response that your kids have to schoolwork, because we have to know we're working towards something. If you constantly are like, nothing's happening, but I've been staring at my book for 3 hours, you're not feeling like you're getting work done. So we're going to flip that by having breaks, having a set number of minutes that we're working, having a set break, and picking somewhere we want to get to at the end of that short session. Average high school student can engage in a productive way for maybe between 25 and 40 minutes at the top. After 40 minutes, we're really getting diminishing returns. So we want a lot, we want to focus a lot more on, how do I explain it? That set number of minutes, and then you take a break, walk away from the screen, get a glass of water, get up, do something different, and then come back to it. And that way we can keep learning and not waste the time in between. Does that make sense? Quality versus quantity. So one really effective way to teach high school students about what can get done in a really short amount of time is that most household chores can be either completed or significant progress can be made in 5 or 10 minute bursts. And it doesn't sound like this if you're having to nudge your child every couple minutes to keep working or to do it. But the reality is, if I set a timer, there's a lot of things that can get done in 5 minutes. So we can practice that with timers. We can practice saying like, hey, you've been studying, you've been looking at those DBQ structure questions for 25 minutes. Why don't you take a break? You know, go downstairs, get some water, or you can flip your laundry or whatever it is. Take a couple minutes, have that break, and then come back and we can think and be refreshed about it, about engaging in schoolwork again. And again, this is something a lot of adults do without knowing it. You get stuck on work, you're having a little bit of writer's block, you get up, you walk away, you come back, and now we can re-engage. The idea is we want to name it for our kids, show them how to do it, or frame it for them so that it's like, hey, it looks like you haven't, you know, you have been on that problem for a while. You're not making any progress. Why don't you take a break? Why don't you walk away? We can come back. We can figure it out together, or I can help you at this time. But you don't have to just keep staring at it if no progress is happening. Do something else. It's really good emotionally to feel like you can get something else accomplished. Even if it's just a small rote chore on your to-do list, get that done, come back, start your work again. The last part I wanted to talk to parents about with managing your time is the non-school hours. And everybody, if you can, go back and remember when you had a newborn at home. And I want you to pretend maybe you had a really easy baby to take care of, but imagine you had a really colicky baby, how you would guard nap time. You don't want anybody ringing the doorbell. You don't want people waking it up. You have to have it because it affects the emotional health of everybody in the house. I want you to guard your students' downtime away from school the same way you would guard nap time for a colicky baby. It is as critical for your family's well-being that your teen knows when they don't have to do schoolwork, that your teen knows that they're not constantly on the clock for having to engage with school. They need those breaks. They need to know when they're coming. They need those breaks to be reliable. And during that break time, don't ask them about their grades. Don't ask them to hop on the source. Don't ask them what they've done. We're off duty. We have to be off duty sometimes. If you're having those regular check-ins that are about schoolwork, you're going to get the answer to the question that you need, and you're going to get to be a really useful support piece in helping them get their work done. Asking 20 times a week is not going to help them get their schoolwork done. And a lot of kids will just choose to give you the answer that ends the conversation quickly, whether it's truthful or not. They just are sick of getting asked all the time. The other part of this is that all of us look at our kids as whole beings, and school is a small part of who they are. And you don't love your kid any less if they're not doing well or if they're struggling at school. That is hard for kids to remember when most of your conversations are around their schoolwork. If you can imagine a boss constantly asking about a menial part of your job, and then you keep doing that small piece of your job because that's all they tell you about, they come to you and you're like, you didn't do X, Y, and Z, this huge report. Yeah, because you didn't tell me about it. You just kept asking me about this little side thing. Well, you forget what's most important when you're only hearing about one thing. Our kids being kind, our kids being brave, our kids being good friends and responsible and kind to themselves. These are really important. We have to remember that. We can't just talk about school all the time. And we also have a lot of other things to do. We're all stuck at home, but there's other things to do. Make a time and a plan for chores, for free time, for family time, and be specific. When you're planning downtime, be specific about it. And we'll get into this a little bit more at the end, but be really deliberate in how you set up those plans. Use your brief meeting time that you have each week to reflect on what worked and how well the study time was used. And this is about collecting information without judgment. There is no reason to judge the outcomes. We're just telling them what we saw, what they saw, how they felt like they studied, what happened. 20 minutes wasn't enough time to finish humanities work. What should be set aside next time? Or doing a 5-minute vocab drill every day with French was really effective. Look at how it worked. We can talk about what these skills are with your kids, and they will be learning more about it in mentorship. But we can just be a mirror and reflect back what they did. Talk to them about what they think they did and how did it go. All right, next slide. Thank you, Michelle. your student may already be buried in work, and how do we dig ourselves out of that? It's really important to remember that not everything is going to be possible to do. So how do we gauge what the most important work is? What gets us the most bang for our buck? And then how do we pick the assignments that are late with purpose? And this needs to be pretty calculated. And Michelle's going to get into the source in Schoology and show you how to find out how much assignments are worth. But let your students really weigh, okay, you only have an hour on this day that we can look at old work, or I know you're already exhausted, we're only going to spend this amount of time doing things that are already past due. But then be deliberate about what you pick. Have a goal, work towards it, and know if it's going to be worthwhile. I don't think it's reasonable for all kids to get everything done that's late. Some of them are pretty far behind, and there's an emotional cost to just doing homework all day long. So we want to be deliberate about what we pick. Second piece of this is, we all know perfection can be the enemy of the good, and it can also be the enemy of productivity. Sometimes you just got to take the 70, knowing you could have done better, 65, whatever it is. That is a better score and better for your grade than getting a 0 but having really great ideas that you never showed anyone. So sometimes you just got to remember, good enough is good enough. And we can have a real conversation about that. This isn't a mantra for life. Doing things halfway is not something we want our kids to do all the time, but sometimes you have to know when to just do something well enough and move on. So that's the thing we can name and practice. Most recent first. Revisit older work once we have our momentum and once we're caught up on what's current. If we keep working from the back, you never get caught up and you never know what's going on in your next lecture. So we're going to start with the most recent work first, pretend like it's a clean slate, and then dig backwards. Studying while we work, quality use of time, and all homework is a form of studying, and there's ways to do that really effectively, and they'll be learning that more in study skills and mentorship, getting more information in different ways. You don't have to worry about all the tricks for studying, just that if we're doing it effectively, we're doing it with purpose, we're doing it with a goal, we don't have to do double work. The homework can be a way to study. Students will be learning more about their use of time in mentorship. In some of the sessions that I'm going to be doing at the school, we're going to be talking about how to study well. For parents at home, I want you to think about guarding that downtime, making sure your kid is taking breaks, and then asking them to talk about what they're doing. Discussing it, being able to explain it, helps flush out a lot of the thoughts as they're still marinating and figures out what they don't know. And then they can go back and look at their work with a little bit more clarity about what is there left to study. Next part of this, how do we eat an elephant? One bite at a time. There are no shortcuts. There's no skip ahead button. You can't take anything besides one day at a time. That expression makes no sense. We don't have a fast forward button. We're all here doing as much as we can. So looking at the whole list of everything that's missing or everything that's unfinished isn't helpful. One thing at a time, one piece at a time, we work through it. And then there are 2 ways to build momentum that really help teens when they're studying. And I call them the snowball method and eating the frog. Snowball method is the idea of pushing a snowball down the hill. It's smaller and it gets bigger. So you pick off the smallest, easiest assignment, the most simple thing, and then we build off that emotional momentum to keep going. The second one is called eating the frog. What's the worst thing? What's the absolute worst thing on the list? What's going to be the hardest? If I get that done, everything else will feel easier. Both of these can work for the same kid. They work at different times. You can experiment with them and present them as options. And then your kid has a choice and some autonomy in what they get to tackle first. But they're both ways to have some energy towards digging yourself out of that pit of homework. And then anytime we're building momentum, working on a big task, we want to name the problem, all the obstacles in our way. We want to name the plan for how to do it, and what does it look like when we're making progress. So name each one of those small goals, set mini goals, celebrate the mini goals, and know what each step along the way looks like. And then my last slide for everybody today is about relationships as your foundation. We are all, myself included, we're all wearing way too many hats right now. It is nearly impossible to be a parent, to be one of your only kids' social contacts, to be their teacher, to be their schedule keeper, to be the bad guy when things go wrong, to be a friend, all at the same time. We are all being asked to do a lot right now, and you have permission to put your relationship with your child first. Their teachers are here to pick up the slack, to help them, to support them. There's a whole academic team at Lincoln to help them. Put that relationship first. And listen to your kid. And I know that sounds like everybody, it's very simple advice, but what's really breaking their day? What's really having the worst effect? What's really the best part of their week? What do they look forward to the most? Find those out, and we can build a routine that's easier for everyone to manage. When you do help with schoolwork, you want to help in really predictable and sustainable ways. Spontaneous offers of help can add stress instead of being supportive. So find a way to maybe help them study for one thing, or to work through their list, or maybe getting their planner organized is really difficult right now. Have a weekly appointment, look at their schoolwork, help them with their planner. That is your support. And then they can rely on it, and it's a thing you can do every week. It's not 2 hours one week and then nothing the next. It needs to be something they can count on. And then naming and encouraging any positive learning skill you see. Please celebrate all victories, tiny ones, big ones. Oh my gosh, you got that entire paper done, awesome. But also like, hey, I noticed you attended every class today. You were on time this morning, all of it, point it out. It doesn't have to be a big phony celebration, but naming the things that they are doing right goes a long way. And it lets them know, one, that you're paying attention, and two, that they are doing things right. They are making good choices. And as hard as this is, they're making the right choice over and over again. And we know because we name it and we see it and we celebrate it. Another piece of advice is just to limit the time for each role that isn't key to your long-term relationship. So being their schedule keeper for school is not something you're going to have to do in 10 years. So don't spend too much time on it right now. We're only going to look at Schoology, or the source will say 2 times a week for 15 minutes each, or twice a week for 30 minutes and we do your planner. Whatever it is, limit that time so that there's extra time for the most important things. What is time right now, really? This is a unique challenge on top of seemingly hundreds of other problems. If we're lucky enough to not have had any major life event happen, it feels like we're on the 250th day of March. And for young people who already struggle with how to budget time and use it well, this is a huge hurdle. So be mindful that it all feels very confusing. Adults are struggling with it, staff, everybody's having a hard time with what do we do each day. There aren't major milestones. We're not doing any of our normal things. And I already mentioned, we can't discuss school all the time. The day has to end. The conversations about schoolwork have to end, and we have to shift away from the to-do list. Again, I know I sound like I'm just repeating, but model, announce your breaks, announce the end of your workday and stick to it. Share with your kids how you're guarding your time for yourself, what you're doing for self-care, what you're doing for your mental health. Be deliberate about sharing that, showing it, modeling it, and making it something your kids can easily copy and practice. And then another way just for helping with relationships right now with all this extra pressure is keeping the small promises of things you can look forward to as a family. Make a plan, stick to it. I mean, pizza's night, like 80s movie marathon, you can trade teen favorites. You know, they can show you the most popular thing right now for them, and vice versa from when you were in high school. Do your holiday shopping online together. Whatever you do together, be deliberate about it. Make a plan. Honor that time that you set aside for them. We're looking at the calendar. We're looking at all our schedules. We're figuring out when we're going to do different things. We just want to be specific about it. When you ask for their ideas for how to help, when you're planning, how can I support them? Be specific in how you want to offer that help. I can help you with your flashcards for 20 minutes at 6 on Tuesday. Would you like that help? That's a very specific way. And then they can decide if they want that help or not. That is different than what's going on with your grades? How did this happen? How did you get here? Those questions feel loaded, they're stressful, and you're not going to get useful information out of them. It's much more effective to ask a direct question that's easy to answer. Like, do you know how to do this assignment? Can you do this assignment on your own? How long do you think this assignment will take you? That is a more effective way to help scaffold their time and show them where they can get to than, why isn't this done? My last suggestions for guarding your family time and being deliberate about it are to do the self-care challenges from Lincoln together, find a common interest or a new hobby together. And the cool thing about doing a hobby together is that you can model messing up, learning, making mistakes, and trying again. If you do something that's brand new to you and your kid sees that, you're normalizing trying and screwing up and trying again. And that's a really powerful thing for students of all ages. A lot of times kids are in this world where all the adults around them seem like masters of their universe. Everything's in control and going well and nobody else makes mistakes because they don't see the process. They don't see all the times that you got it wrong. They don't see how many times you've made that lasagna. They just know that it's perfect every time. So if you pick something new, you get to model that failing forward and deliberate practice, and it can be really fun. That is all I have for you guys right now. I'm happy to take questions at the end about study skills or tips or any ideas about how to schedule your weeks so that you have time for everything we need to get done. Thank you so much for listening.
All right, thank you so much, Megan. That was amazing. I'm going to be using some of your tips in my own life, I think. So I want to build off of what Megan just told us about, and also one of the really great questions that was posted in the chat, which is, are teachers helping students with these skills as well? And so what I'm going to be going over with you was actually covered in your students' mentorship class either last week or the week before. So this is something that you and your student will now have some knowledge of. So one of the strongest tools that I believe that we have right now at Lincoln is Schoology, which we can use to plan for the week. We actually surveyed students over the summer and got their input on how they wanted teachers to structure Schoology, what would be most useful for them. One of the things that came out of that is that they wanted teachers to post in the calendar on Sundays sort of a snapshot of what that whole next week would look like for that class. So if your student opens up their Schoology calendar, and if you as a parent log into Schoology, on Sunday you should see some sort of boxes like this here in orange. If you click on any one of those, for this example, we chose Algebra 2 agenda for December 6th. We now see what's happening in that class, both days that it's going to meet this week, the important assignments, the topics that are going to be covered, as well as the homework and other upcoming due dates. So this is a really powerful tool in and of itself to help your student have a big picture view of what their week is going to look like. So additionally, if you and your student are sitting together to have those check-in meetings that Megan recommended, one way you could use this time is by using our remote learning weekly planner. This has gone out a couple times in the family newsletter. It's also available on the school website and on your student's Schoology mentorship page. So you can see I took this one as an example. I took the activities and the assignments for that Algebra 2 class. It's the student's first period. So I plugged it into the planner. If the student does this for every period for the week, they have one page, a one-stop shop, everything that they can expect for that week. And it's their week at a glance that they can check off activities as they do them anytime. So our recommendation is that students fill this out either on Sunday evening or Monday morning if they're a morning person and they want to get up a little bit before first period. That way, again, they've just got it all there ready to go to start their week on a right foot. Another tool that you have as families is the source, which you can use to track not just grades, but assignments. So here I have an example of what you might see when you log into the source and are checking your students' grades. But more important than these letter grades is actually clicking on the grade to see why it is what it is. So in this example, this student for quarter 2 is currently getting an E in ceramics. So we clicked on this and we got a list of all of the assignments that have been graded so far for quarter 2. So this gave the student and I something really specific that we could talk about. Again, like Megan said, not just why are you failing ceramics. It could be, well, tell me about these timed drawings. What's holding you back from that? How long do you think that might take you to complete? So again, another resource that we gave students in mentorship over the last 2 weeks that goes along with this is an assignment tracking tool. I would recommend this mostly for those students who are buried already, like Megan mentioned in the middle of her presentation, students who need to prioritize and dig themselves out a little bit. So for this one, we took these assignments, we added them into this planner, we looked at the due dates so we can see how long ago things were assigned or were due, and then we also had a place for notes. So for this one, the student thinks that they turned this assignment in, but it's marked missing, so this is a note for them to remember to ask their teacher about that assignment. So if you would like to find these tools, there's 2 main places that you can go for them. The number one is on your student's mentorship Schoology page. You should find a folder labeled organizational tools. In that are multiple copies of both of these tools in different ways. You could print it out, fill it out by hand, or you could, fill it out in a fillable PDF if your student prefers digital. The other section that you as a parent can find these maybe a little more easily is on the tutoring help section of the Lincoln website. You go to resources and services, drop down menu, it's right down there at the bottom. All right, and so now I'm going to turn things over to the wonderful Ms. Papumpara to talk about social emotional learning.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. So I am excited to talk to you all about self-care and how we are managing our mental health. But more specifically, I think that it's important to give you all kind of a peek behind the counselor curtain to share how I talk to your student about self-care and how some of the tactics that I take, whether I'm talking one-on-one with a student or whether I'm talking to a whole classroom, which I haven't had a chance to do this year, but I'm sure I'll be able to do in future years when we're all together again. I also want to talk about, very similarly to Megan addressed it, how we model self-care in ourselves and how you might take care of yourself as a parent and somebody who is functioning like an academic coach and a teacher and a administrative assistant for your for your student, how are you also taking care of yourself? And then provide some resources for families that are important and usable. Next slide, please. Thank you. So these are some images that I have pulled directly from slideshows that I have made and presented to students in past years. Self-care is something that we hear a lot about. We hear a lot about it in the media. We hear about it a lot in advertising, especially these days. But we don't really hear it defined, and we don't really hear it defined by anybody that isn't trying to make money off of it. It's quite a robust industry these days. So I will define it. Self-care is the daily and intentional maintenance of balancing physical, emotional, and relational wellness. That is not a very exciting definition, but that is exactly what it is. And going back to what Megan said, just like we might need to protect the downtime or the nap time of our colicky baby, I also very firmly believe that there is a baby inside of all of us that needs a nap or needs a food or needs to go outside and go for a walk. And we can't be functional and we can't be successful or feel good about the things that we accomplish, more importantly, if we're not taking care of ourselves. So I say always, it's not always fun. Sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes we mess up. It's not always Instagram worthy. So it's not always like a bubble bath or things that are really exciting. Sometimes it's like getting 10 hours of sleep when you need it, and you can't really put that on Instagram because you're asleep. And it's also not easy to do without support or accountability. And I like to encourage my students to check in with each other about how they take care of themselves, because they talk to each other all the time and they talk to you all the time, but they might not know how to talk to you as parents about how to address some of these things or work it out or manage the feelings that might come with trying to figure out what the best wellness plan is for themselves. So next slide, please. So these are the lists that this is a list that I lifted again from a slideshow that I present to students. Excuse me. And in this lesson, what I do is I say, okay, let's look at these three domains: body, mind, and relationship. Here are some of my suggestions that I came up with off the top of my head to that address some of these things: our physical wellness, our emotional or our spiritual wellness, and then our relationship wellness, or the wellness that we curate through our relationships and our connection with other people. And then I might have them write down one or two. Maybe they can choose one from the list and come up with one on their own. Maybe they like a lot of these on the list, maybe not. Maybe you as a parent are reading this list and you're like, none of these apply to me, and that's totally fine. What I would encourage you to do in conversations around the dinner table, maybe instead of talking about grades or the source, maybe you can talk about what you did that day to take care of yourself. I like to end any kind of conversation I'm having with a student with, how are you going to take care of yourself this week? Hey, I'm not going to talk to you for a couple of weeks, so how are you going to take care of yourself in the meantime? And it's always a good question that sparks good conversations. Sometimes the answer is maybe not ideal, like I'm going to play 10 hours of video games. But that can also lead to okay, well, video games are definitely a stress reliever, but can we also launch into something else? Can we use that time better? Can we play video games and then go for a walk and then write a letter to a friend? So it's definitely an evolving topic, and for me, it's seasonal. So I don't know about you, but for me, my self-care looks different in the summer than it does in the dark, cold winter. And that's okay too, and it's evolving. So you as a parent, ask yourself, how do you take care of your own self, and how do you implement boundaries for your own wellness? Do you have boundaries for your own wellness? I don't always have boundaries. And how do you forgive yourself grace, or how do you forgive yourself when maybe you have a week where you didn't take very good care of yourself? Because we always have those weeks. And I know right now, weeks can go by in ways that feel like hours went by. So I totally feel for everyone that is experiencing that as well. So while you are thinking about that, maybe think about the strategies on this list or a list you can make for yourself. If your student is sitting next to you, maybe you're already talking about it, but if they aren't, maybe that's something that you guys can work on together, maybe curating the list of things that you do to take care of your own self. So at LHS, we have some specific things where we try to address self-care whenever possible. Every week there is a self-care challenge found in Schoology and also talked about in mentorship. You can find that right here in Ms. Pentecost's mentorship. There's a folder that says self-care challenges. You can go back and read all the way back to September. And we are posting them weekly, so you can kind of see what's going on. Maybe that's something that you can do as a family. Many of them are easily done as a family. There's also counselor check-ins. We are available. We're available to meet with your student. If your student's having a tough time or you're feeling like maybe you need some extra help as a parent to have them talk to somebody, a trusted adult, they can log into Schoology. There is a book an appointment tool that they can go on there, and it is linked to our calendars, and they can choose the time that works best for them. Join a sport or a club. This is something that I encourage every student to do. We have lots of clubs, lots of sports. We have lots of groups of students that are meeting just to talk about whatever it is they want to talk about, whatever they're interested in. And that is the piece that is missing from school right now that many of us miss the most. But it is happening, and we can all get kind of screen fatigue and feel kind of down about it. But I still think it's important to try and engage maybe once a week in one club and make some connections and talk about something that interests you. Some other supports that I like, there's this great article from the New York Times about burnout and how to make boundaries. There is an Instagram account that I follow, and I sometimes use their content, I credit their content of course, but with working with parents or working with students, called Curious Parenting. And then my kind of go-to meditation or yoga is this free website on YouTube called Yoga with Adriene. It has everything for all abilities. It's meditations, it's yoga, it's strength training, it's all the things. So if you're looking for something that is fun to do in your house and gives you access to all different kinds of wellness opportunities, Yoga with Adriene is a great place to start. And I will pass it along to Mr. Biddle to talk about some other things.
Thank you, Ms. Pecumpra. Yes, I am Mr. Biddle. I am counselor for students A to G at Lincoln. I'm excited to be here tonight. Thank you for those of you who are joining us. I love these because I'm actually learning a lot of things. These are not just for our students. Let's be real. A lot of us need to think about these skills, and if we knew them, I think we've forgotten a few of them. That's how I feel about it. So one of the things we were thinking about as we prepared for tonight is our students that are navigating systems successfully and are actually doing okay, what are they thinking about these things? And then also just for our students in general, what do they need in this time? Asking the students directly. So one of the things that we are really excited about as at Lincoln, and this happens in all high schools, I've worked at a few high schools, is tapping into the resources of students. We have some fantastic students at Lincoln, including some that are listening here, I'm assuming. And one of the things that they have prepared is a website that we would like to share with you tonight. So as you can see, there's a link here, and I'm going to ask our slide controller to click on that website if it'll open. Let's see. Oh, Ms. Pentecost, you're fantastic. Okay, so I have it in front of me. So one of the things, so if you would scroll down just a little, Ms. Pentecost. So Lincoln High School online resources for students. Okay, so the home page. So we're at the home page. One of the things they wanted to focus on is healthy habits for distance learning. So if you could click on that, thank you so much. So as you scroll down, you will see that our students have suggestions about healthy habits. These are student-to-student things that are working for our students currently. Make your bed, change the world. I love this. I open this. It makes me feel like I have a sense of accomplishment every morning when I just make my bed. I love this. Lots of tips here for just some healthy habits. We've already gone over some tonight. Academic resources. Now this is a really cool area. So we have tried to develop our own academic resources, but looking at what students actually use. It's like telling a student, hey, did you see this thing on Facebook? And they're like, Mr. Biddle, we don't use Facebook, we use Instagram and TikTok. This is how we have approached this. So we need to understand what our students are actually using. So math resources. So Khan Academy, that's a great one. For each grade level or each level of math, they've actually posted what they like to use as a resource. We love this. And then let's look at the science resources. So we have some really cool science resources here, organic chemistry tutor, a crash course in AP physics, AP biology, some chemistry topics. So a lot of our students are in these courses, and so these are some great resources. I am going to encourage the students as I continue to talk to them to add resources for the other science classes that we have here as well. And then for history, let's see what they have. Oh, some more crash course, and then Adam Norris, a playlist for APUSH. So we have all levels of history here. So this is a great resource for all of our students. And then the last area that they focused on is mental health and relaxation. Love this. So they have some music suggestions. We also, each of your counselors also has music suggestions on their Schoology. So if your student logs into Schoology and goes to our area, we also have some self-care and some tips around music that makes us feel happy and some things to pay attention to. Miss Scott's book recommendations are here, some coloring books, some way that students just can find a way to decompress and, you know, find something that they want to focus on. All right, we're going back to the slideshow. Now, another thing that we've talked to students about is, you know, when you're at home, what is it that's helpful for you? And they talked about being able to have meaningful conversations with their parents and what kind of questions they love to be asked. So we have a few suggestion questions here. There's a lot of things online that you can find as well. If you just Google, what kind of questions should I ask my teen? I bet you're going to come up with a lot of fascinating things. Of course, these need to be appropriate for your home, and everybody has different comfort levels with these. But some of the things that we talk about, just the basics, open-ended questions. It's like if you walk into Bath and Body Works. They never say, hello, are you doing okay? Fine, and walk away from you. No, they're going to follow you around the store. This is the plan that we want. We want to actually talk with our kids sometimes and ask them open-ended questions. What do you think about whatever topic? Something that's interesting to you, something that you know that's interesting to them. And these can be things, this feeds into the next question. A lot of our students, and we know this from our conversations, are thinking about equity, thinking about gender, thinking about race and opportunity in our schools. How does your student feel about these things? There's been a lot that's happened in this country, well, historically, but in the last 6 months, it's brought some of this to the forefront. And it would be really nice if you're not having these conversations with your student to have a conversation with your student about these. And then ask them some fun questions. We've all been stuck at home for the last 9 months. So, fun questions. After this is all over, what do you want to do? What's the first thing that you want to do? Who do you want to hug? What restaurant do you want to go to? There's no limitations. What would you do with your time? I think those are important things to ask your student. And then referring back to previous part of, next slide, please. So Ms. Terada talked about a sense of accomplishment and celebrating small victories. It is really important that we're looking at your students' goals, helping them set goals, and celebrating when they accomplish pieces of those goals or the goals. And I really want to encourage you to have that positive, you know, interaction with your 15-year-old, even though they're a 15-year-old, because remind yourself of what you were like as a 15-year-old maybe. And just think about how hard this would be when we want to socialize and do all these things, and we're all stuck indoors and they're missing their friends, just like all of us adults are. So it's really important to think about those things. And one last thing that I want to leave you with is I encourage you to spend as much time as a family as you possibly can, whether it's trying to do fun things, dancing, walking, cooking together, cleaning, being silly, just hanging out. I know this can be scary and overwhelming for everyone, and nothing will help ease your students' fears and encourage their cognitive and social development like spending time with you. Your students want to learn from you, want to have conversations with you about how you organize, about how you're dealing with these tough times. So just want to leave you with that. We are going to move into the Q&A. So we will do that now. And I'm actually going to turn off my camera and I'm going to put, this is a fruit basket upset. So we don't know who's going to be there. Okay. Great. We have a question. So, what is a reasonable work time versus break time? My 10th grade son has autism spectrum disorder and wants to do 15 minutes of work and 15 minutes of break. What are your thoughts about this, Ms. Terada, and anybody else who wants to answer this as well?
Thank you. I am also the parent of a child with autism, and this is specific to you, but really helpful for everyone to hear. What we can tolerate with work and how much break time we need changes. It varies. There are some days where engaging at all is a monumental task. If your child is being super rigid about that, we're going to move that slowly into more productive time. So we can start and say, well, as long as you have a pile of schoolwork to do, it can't be 50-50. But what if we did 20 minutes of focused study and you told me what your goal was for that 20 minutes, and then when the 20 minutes is done, you get 10 minutes off, and you can do whatever you want for those 10 minutes. Use a timer on the phone, use a kitchen timer, egg timer if you don't want them on screens or if they want to take a break from their phone because it's a time vacuum. But be deliberate about it. And then have conversations about what got done in that 20 minutes. 10 minutes if you go for a brief walk, or if you do a chore that was bugging you, or if you do a little bit of exercise, or have a mini dance party. If 10 minutes is an awesome break if we use it effectively. If we're still staring at our computer, or we're looking at our to-do list, or we're just scrolling through our phone and we're not really engaging with anything, 10 minutes goes by really quickly and it doesn't feel restorative. So one, we want to think about quality versus quantity with the break. And then two, if they're really stuck on they need that 15 minutes, honor that for a while and just ask for accountability with the time that they are working. Setting mini goals will get you a long way, but also showing your student that you respect their downtime will get you a long way to more work getting done when they're working. Flipping the schedule on its head and really planning downtime has a cool effect where you use the structured time for school more effectively. That's what I got.
Those are great points. A follow-up, so do you have any recommendations when you are working with families around how much time specifically should be spent on homework? And I know I'm going to preface this by saying I know this can vary by whether or not students are taking more rigorous classes or not, but when you're working with families, do you have specific recommendations around that?
It really varies on the student, the workload, the learning disability, if there's one present, and what other time commitments they have. The things we want to look out for is schoolwork shouldn't interfere with sleep. We don't do well if we're not getting quality rest. Schoolwork shouldn't damage our social bonds or our family connections. If you're spending so much time on schoolwork that you don't have time for other things that are key to your emotional well-being, you're doing too much schoolwork. And then on the other end, you're not doing enough schoolwork if you're consistently bored, but you don't know what's going on in class. So we can use those kind of as parameters. I've worked with students at really rigorous private schools. I've worked with students that are on the International Baccalaureate pathway that have 4 or 5 hours a day of homework. I've seen students that learn incredibly quickly and they get everything done in 20 minutes, and then their parents are worried about how unstructured their day is. So it varies, and it varies day to day. One of the keys that we want to teach our kids is that there's always going to be something coming up where we have to demonstrate what we know. Traditionally it's tests or papers or projects, but there's always opportunities to demonstrate what we know. If you have a really light homework day and you're done with everything for 30 minutes, you can steal minutes from a more busy day that you know is coming. You can make flashcards, you can make an outline, you can write a rough draft for something your teacher told you is going to be due in a little while. You can take really simple notes. There's lots of ways to basically steal busy minutes from another day and balance out each day. This is super empowering for students. They feel really on top of it and really proud when they get something done ahead of schedule. And then when that really busy day comes up, they get to say like, oh, I was ready for this. I knew what was going to happen. In order to do that, though, we have to look at the whole week. And it was a little bit easier for me to teach this before the pandemic because we could put clubs and sports schedules and obligations into the calendar and we could see, okay, where's your free time? Where's your hard day? Where's your busy day? And right now, time is a flat circle blob and we don't know what to do with it. So we have to build that structure. If we look at the whole week, you don't know what's coming or something's missing on the source or you know something's going to happen with your humanities class but you're not sure what yet, set aside a chunk of time and then stick to it. So we're going to say like, okay, Wednesdays from 2 to 4, you need to be doing active studying. That can be reviewing old material, that can be catching up on homework, that can be reading, that can be learning about something that you know you're going to get quizzed on later. Whatever it is, you're going to do 4 cycles of studying for 30 minutes, taking a 5-minute break. And that time, even if there's not assignments to turn in, is for deliberate learning. And then at 4, you're done. You're going to help set the table before dinner. The rest of the evening is yours. Do whatever you want. Plan something exciting. Do your self-care activities. Have a group chat with your friends. Let's watch that movie you were telling me about. But we're going to have a reward after that deliberate practice of study time. And then all the other details of how many minutes it should be has everything to do with the workload, your students' pace, and what other time commitments they have. And pace is not the same as being a good student or a bad student. We all learn at different paces. We all have a different internal writing process. We all memorize things differently. We all come up with creative ideas in different ways. It takes me a really long time to do anything artistic. I'm a perfectionist. I don't like it. I don't tolerate mistakes well. It's really stressful. But you give me something to organize, like my pantry, I can bang that out in like an hour. Some people are the exact opposite. They can throw themselves into an art project and it's amazing and it doesn't take that long. But really tedious tasks are stressful for them. So I resist giving like a hard and fast 60 minutes a day or 90 minutes a day. But they should spend at least 30 minutes every day reviewing what they learned about earlier in the day, doing a refresh, telling you about what they learned, writing down some notes, writing down things they didn't understand, or, oh, I got this mountain of vocab words in my science lesson. I don't know what any of those are. Well, they're probably going to be important at some point. Maybe we look those up before your next lecture. So there's always something to do every day, but the time each day changes.
Thank you. That was very helpful. I have a question for Fruit Basket Upset, Miss Pentecost. So there is a question. So recently, before I say the question, recently we've been having conversations with students about whether or not they're actually using asynchronous time to finish their work and what the benefits of that might be. So the question in the chat is, how do we help our kids stay focused on schoolwork during the day when it's asynchronous class time and at the start and end of the day from 9 a.m. to, let's say, 3:30? Any thoughts about that?
Yes, absolutely. I saw that question as well, and what it made me think of is back a long time ago when I was an 8th grader and we toured my future high school. I remember getting the advice from a high school student, which is why obviously I paid attention to it, that anytime a teacher gave you free time in class, you should get started on the homework. And I remember really internalizing that and realizing, oh my gosh, I have done what Megan just told us about, which is steal busy minutes that I would rather use for something else and get it done at that time. And I honestly really do think that having that advice was part of my success as a high schooler. So I would encourage our students to do the exact same thing. If it's asynchronous time, you should be working, and if at all possible, working on the class that you're in, because then your brain isn't trying to jump around to too many different things and sort of getting caught up in that multitasking cycle. So I believe what I hear from some students is when asynchronous time starts, they take a break, which is perfectly reasonable, but they sort of forget that the break needs to end. And by the time they've realized that, oh wait, it's asynchronous time and I need to do my work, the next class has started. And I think that, and Megan said it too, time is a flat circle right now. It's becoming, you know, it feels like everything's long and short. So I think if they're gonna have a break during asynchronous time, it's gotta be timed in some way. There needs to be a timer that they can see, that they can hear, they know when their break is over. And I think if our students start using that time really thoughtfully, they're going to see their homework load decrease and become less than they think it is.
Perfect, thank you. Oh.
Can I just add to that? It is really helpful with asynchronous time and an assignment to have a reasonable goal. And this is super hard for students to do, to anticipate how long something's going to take or how far they can get in 30 minutes. There are ways to encourage this that don't shame your kids, don't rush them, and give them some data. And we just write it down. We're just going to take a guess. On the paper planner, we have written the assignment, take a guess at how long it's going to take, and then write down how long it actually took. And it's completely normal to be really wrong with these guesses. All that means is that we're just collecting data. We're just finding out, like, oh, my art class always takes way longer than I thought it would. Or, oh, if I take notes during geometry, the homework's really fast. These are ways for kids to develop metacognition and to be thinking about how they learn. And that's a really empowering tool to put in their toolkit right now. It is usually much more scaffolded at school. It is really hard for your teachers to walk around and nudge the kid who's spacing out when we can't see them. So this is a big learning curve for them, but I would say talking to them about, like, take a break, set a timer, take a real break, enjoy your break, and then figure out how far you want to get before your next class starts.
Thank you. So the next question I am going to send Ms. Pacumpera, front and center. So Ms. Pacumpera, question, should downtime not include electronics, video games, and phones? We have recently had a conversation about this, so I think you might have a good answer.
We have, you and
I think so.
Oh no. I don't remember, but I will answer the question the best I can. And
Ms. Pacumpera, I accidentally muted you. Please unmute yourself.
hello. Okay. Well, so I guess what I would say is everything in moderation. We hear a lot. Oh, and now I'm remembering what we talked about, Mr. Biddle. We hear a lot that there is an extreme lack of social connection between students, and many of our students use their electronics, their video games, their phones to stay connected to their friends. Many students are like playing video games together, and that has taken the place of like shooting hoops at lunch, which happens a lot at Lincoln, or walking to Safeway or the QFC, to get, you know, their healthy, super healthy, nutritious things that they choose at QFC at lunch. Those things aren't happening, and so phone, Snapchat, Instagram, that has replaced that social interaction. I have a hard time saying that they should not include electronics, but what I would say is something that helps me a lot, and in turn I talk a lot with students, is not doubling up our electronics, and is being really intentional with the time. So what is the purpose of the time with the phone? Am I just doom scrolling? Am I on the news just looking for things that make me feel stressed out? Or am I sending an email to a friend? Am I Snapchatting and showing off something that I just made in class? Am I on Instagram posting some photos that I took of the snow in Leavenworth because I just went on a drive this past weekend, or whatever it might be? So I would say that social connection is happening virtually, and that's really important. But I also don't think that our students have a ton of awareness of the limitations that they should have for their own brains and their own eyeballs. I think that kind of wraps everything up. Mr. Biddle, do you want to add anything to that?
I was actually, here, I'll make myself live here for a moment myself. So I was actually going to say the same thing. So yes, the conversation that I was referring to was a conversation about video games and headsets, and I'm not a gamer. And so I was thinking, oh, so they're chatting or whatever. And Ms. Pacumpero reminded me that when they're wearing headsets and they're in the game playing with their friends, that they're actually talking and doing some of the same socializing that they may be doing when they're at school. So that's what I was going to refer to. I do agree, everything in moderation. I'm a big believer in that. And that's one of the things that Megan was talking about, is making sure that we do everything in chunks and that we give some time, some downtime. And it is a little bit different when a student is directing what they're doing with their time versus having to sit and focus on school. So we do feel a little differently about it. Another question that just came up, and I haven't had time to really think about it, but we do have some thoughts about students with their cameras on and how they're engaging. So the question is published. It's a pretty long question here. If anyone wants to read it. We as counselors have a philosophy about students turning on their cameras, and one of the reasons is it helps them engage. It doesn't just, other kids can see them, but it really keeps them focused on what's happening in the class. People can see them, and we're really trying to work with our teachers to encourage them to wrap in students into conversations. Just like when you and I were in school, though, there are teachers that are lecturers. This is no different than in this time of COVID when people are using cameras. And so not everyone wraps students into their classes as much as best practice, and we're working with our teachers every day on that. We also are going to start trying to do a campaign for students to turn on their cameras. We have some ideas that we're floating right now, and hoping to present them to staff in a way that we can reward students that are using their cameras, because we do think that we will see some positive outcomes to that. Does anybody want to add anything to that? I think that's a no. Okay. I think we are set with the questions. Again, we want to thank you all for coming. We really appreciate you being here. I hope that you learned some valuable tips, both students and parents. I really think that there's some amazing things here, some resources. We will have this posted by Friday, probably before, on our website. It'll be a news article on our website, and we will send out the links in our weekly newsletter. So look out for that on Friday. Thank you again, and I will pass it over to Ms. Pentecost for the final goodbyes.
All right, yes. So thank you again to all of our presenters who were here with us tonight. Thank you to our families who attended, and if you're watching this later, thank you from the past. I hope that you got some tips and tricks here. Know that we are all in this together, and as Mr. Biddle said earlier, Lincoln students are amazing. And I learn from them every day, and they are going to help us get through this. We're going to help them get through this. And so just thank you for your partnership and your support. And have a great night.